Hi, everyone. Welcome to Office Hours. Great to have you here. If you've come here via YouTube and want to know more about what we do, it's incredibly simple. Just sneak over to officehours.global on the web. That's our primary web portal for more information and links about the show. Also, you can use the new system, relatively new. It's a QR code, and it's sitting over here in the corner. At least it'll be here in just a second. And if you shoot that with your phone or anything else that reads QR codes, that'll take you directly into the system for putting your questions in. If you're new around here, questions drive this entire show, particularly on days like today, because our second hour today is going to be all questions. We had a little schedule change here at the end, so you've got lots of room. If there's anything you're interested in having to do with production or equipment or internet protocols or things like that, this is the place to come to. We have a great panel full of technological experts here who can help you answer almost any questions. They've been doing it for 3 years plus, and we very seldom get stumped. It happens occasionally, but not too often. So that is our second hour today, another hour of general questions. So there's plenty of room for your questions. We encourage you to use that QR code system or to go into the Mukana interface and pump in your questions and vote for them, please. Because as always, the questions with the most votes get moved up to the top of the list and we get to them first. So that's the rules of the show. We're ready to dive in. Mitch, what is our first question for today?
Thank you, Bill. Our first question comes to us from Tlaloc Lopez Waterman in Tallahassee, Florida. I watched Killers of the Flower Moon at a Regal Cinema. The color of it was very unpleasing. How are movie theaters' digital projectors calibrated? And is there a standard for this? I'm interested in streaming the film when it's available to compare.
You're lucky because Alex knows a good little bit about cinema projection. Alex.
Yeah, I mean, I think that the when you look at digital projection, a lot of times theaters it depends on the size of the theater and where it is, but a lot of times they're running their lamps a little low. That makes they save $500 every 6 months by doing that. And so they're shaving off a little bit. So sometimes it's not as bright as it should be. Oftentimes it's half of what it should be in smaller theaters. I will admit I've probably not seen a movie in 10 years that wasn't at IMAX or Dolby Cinema. So those are the two that I go to see stuff in. And I can't remember a time when I've been to a smaller theater in quite some time. I think maybe I saw one in Washington, D.C., but especially if you're in a smaller movie theater, that's a little bit more out there, you may find that that's where the managers are cutting corners to keep those bulbs going. So that's the thing that we've seen in the past.
Courtney.
And I may remind you that Regal Theaters is in Chapter 11, bankruptcy reorganization. And they also, right before they went into bankruptcy, they purchased access or leased a lot of the old ArcLight theaters, which were well equipped. But the problem is they haven't upgraded a lot of them. They've been moving a lot of equipment around as they've closed down a number of theaters and gutted the equipment. So, it's a bit of a roll of the dice, let's say, to what the theater you're going to see a film in and what projector is in that particular theater, because there can be 3 different types of projectors in each screen of a multiplex. So, and I doubt that they've had anyone in to calibrate them lately, although there are DCI, which is the package that the film is delivered in digitally, P3 calibration files that they can do. They can put up, and a qualified projectionist can come in and align the projector to the color space, et cetera, et cetera. But like Alex said, a lot of times they run the lamps at a lower speed to save money because, they got to pop that popcorn and make all their money.
Absolutely. Mitch, you have a comment?
Is Christie still the Cadillac of projectors, and are they laser, not bulbs?
Yeah,
Alex,
that's why I raised my hand. Is I want to correct myself a little bit. Is that running them low still saves money? so they still may not be at the same brightness, but they do not have bulbs. That's for film. And I was missaying it, but they are still running them oftentimes a little bit lower. And Christie is one of the major ones. There's a couple different players in that market.
Barco, didn't they buy Christie?
Yeah, Barco. I think Barco bought Christie. Yeah, I think that they're both the same company now. But Barco and Christie are pretty much all of them. Like that's all the theaters there. Anyway, I can't say that. Anyway, so the yeah, they're all Barco or Christie at this point. And the theaters are using, the low end version of what Christie is capable of. Christie and Barco, Christie has, 4K, 120, even 8K projectors, and they get used in corporate, they get used in other things. The theaters haven't made that investment to move back up again because the theaters are, really not in a great space, So, theater going, of course, had a hard hit during COVID. And then in addition to that, the behavior has changed a lot. Now, while you're seeing some prices, you're seeing revenue still going up for movies. A lot of that has to do with the fact that they're charging more per ticket. And so those are things that are a little bit more complicated to manage for the theaters. And most of the money goes back for the first 6 weeks, most of the money goes back to the film, to the distribution. So the theaters really depend on your popcorn. Like they don't make money on your ticket; they make money on your popcorn, and it's a hard life. And so I think that we want to be kind of, at the same, we can complain about theaters, but it's a really hard business and I'm surprised that as many theaters are in business that there are, because it's a really tight business right now. Again, but I would recommend looking for IMAX and digital Dolby Cinemas. The problem with Dolby Cinemas is, I'm sorry, this is going to ruin your experience, but there's these blue lights that go down the steps that go on Dolby Cinemas that I can't stop seeing. I haven't gone to those for a couple of years now. But for a long time before that happened, I think it happened during COVID, they turned the lights up. And I know that there's some safety thing, but I don't see them as much in other theaters. I just see them in Dolby theaters.
And COVID really hit movie theaters hard for, a whole year practically. They just had nobody in the seats at all. Yeah, and that's very, very difficult to sustain a business when you've got rent, particularly a lot of theaters in malls, and malls are not known for having small real estate costs. So, Courtney, you had a follow-up?
Yeah, and if you really want to see it cool, come to Culver City to the Amazon's theaters and see it on the big Onyx screens from Samsung that are LED screens with super high pitch and ultra bright. It'll burn your retinas out.
Courtney and I saw it. Went with a couple other folks. We all watched it there, and with Carmi and Courtney and 300 of our favorite friends. And wow, those screens are amazing. If you're in LA in Culver City, do they play to the public? Were those open? Are those open?
Yeah,
to the public?
I think there's 3 of them that are open to the public on a daily basis.
They are amazing.
Whatever is top of the pops.
Yeah, amazing screens.
Cool. Let's go to the next question.
And it's from Guy Cochran in Seattle. How does the 1-inch sensor on the new DJI Osmo Pocket 3 compare with that of other existing cameras on the market?
Everybody's doing a lot of talking about this new unit. Jeffrey, what are your thoughts?
Well, I can't wait to get my hands on the Pocket 3. I'm a big fan of the Pocket series. I have the first one and the second one. I also have the Insta360 RS 1-inch sensor, which I used at not only CES, but also NAB and Infocom, other events like that. And the one thing, it was just amazing how I didn't need to actually bring in a whole bunch of lighting for what I needed to shoot. And I really liked that functionality to it. The only problem that I see is that with the Insta360, it did get hot, and there were a couple times if I used it for a long period of time, it would start to overheat. I'm not sure how DJI is working with that, because I would guess that this is going to be something that people have at least 30 minutes to 45 minutes worth of shooting time for their shots. But I'm hoping to get one before CES this year so I can shoot all my videos with it.
Alex.
Yeah, I watched a couple of videos, particularly Potato Jet's video on it, and I think it left me a little less interested in it. I think I was excited. I started watching these, and I started looking at it, and I said, I looked at the quality of it, and I was like, I just don't think it looks that much better than an iPhone, and I feel like I'd rather just have an Osmo. And I know it's smaller and it fits in, but I'm going to carry my phone anyway. And I didn't feel like for the money that it was charging, I wasn't totally sure. Now, what I'm interested in, though, I have to say, is thinking about it as a webcam. So as a webcam that I can control. So one of the things I'm doing research on before I decide to pull the trigger on it is what kind of API or what kind of remote control can we have to it? Because the holy grail for us is being able to have a PTZ, and we've been hammering Insta360 for their link for this, and OBSBot has one. But what we're really interested in is that 1-inch sensor or larger with a PTZ head that we can control remotely, so that we can make fine adjustments if we send out a kit. And so as a kit camera, I find it to be pretty interesting. It feels like they're also continuing to move this up. My guess is that the next one will be Super 35, like at $700. Like if you look at the trajectory, in a year or two, we're going to see a Super 35 version of this camera, and then we're really getting into some real things. But as I saw the footage on Potato Jet, I was kind of like, man, I don't know if it's worth the $600 or $550 to get it when I could get an Osmo and get most of the same shots.
Courtney, your thoughts?
Yeah, I looked at it, but a couple of things that set me off too is the fact that they still don't have I don't think on the unit itself it has a 1/4-inch anchor. You have to add the little thing on the bottom, have to add an extra piece to get a tripod mount onto it, which is, stupid. And it's $660 for the combo package that gives you the tripod adapter and I don't know, Jeffrey, did you read? It says wireless mic receiver. Did they build a 2.4 gigahertz mic receiver in there for their DJI wireless mics?
No.
Two.
They have a creator's kit. So with the creator's kit, you get the
it's a thing that goes
extra,
and punches on the bottom and connects to the.
Are you sure? Because I looked at it. It looked like they might have built the receivers into it. 2 of them.
I'll have to double check.
Take a look. When I looked at if you look at the end of the video for Potato Jet again, you'll see. I don't think he had anything extra on it, and he was able to get that mic in there. So I think that there's a dual mic receiver built into the camera.
I'm looking at the main page, and like I said, it's all new. So I have to. Then of course, if it connects up as a webcam, it might have that there. But whenever I used my my pockets, I usually got I did buy the actual selfie stick attachment because it's got a joystick in it. I can extend it up a little bit, and it gives me a little bit more freedom to play rather than holding that thing like this. I can hold it down, and then the unit's right here. So and of course your hand doesn't get in any of the shots when you have it that way.
But I worry about the rotating screen. It has a little screen so that you can do, portrait the wrong way or landscape the right way. And I worry about it automatically flipping back and forth, how many times it's going to be able to do that and still maintain a connection without breaking those little tiny wires inside.
All right. Well, everybody's interested in the camera, and I'm sure we'll be hearing a lot more about it here on Office Hours as it gets out in the wild and people get experience with it. So let's dive into our next question.
Jack Ruppel from Breckenridge, Colorado. My question on countdowns elicited almost 15 minutes of discussion. Reposting as a technical question, can this be done with an ATEM Mini Pro, connected iPhone, mirrorless camera, Mac Studio, StreamDeck, plus an old Mac Pro? And how would you do it?
So we're not trying for a record here. We talked 15 minutes about the question yesterday.
A little shorter.
Yeah, let's be a little more concise. But Alex, tell us about it.
Yeah. So what Jack had asked yesterday is possibly playing movies during the countdown clock, and the way you could do that is if you took that old MacBook Pro that you have, I don't know, depending on how old it is, but it could be probably pretty old, like 6, 7, 8 years old, and you throw a playback system like QLab or MIDI. Or on the air from Softron, any one of those would be a nice playout system that's designed for it. You can use QuickTime or VLC and other things like that, but the ones that are really designed to do this with playlists and so on and so forth are probably those 3 on the Mac. And you just have its HDMI go out into your ATEM Mini, and you should be able to play it out. If you embed the audio into that HDMI, you're going to get the audio into it, and you can run it right through the ATEM. So that would be probably the easiest way to get that video into the system.
Always keep your old laptop around, I guess, unless you're recycling heavyweight. Chris Fenwick, your thoughts?
Playout B would be a good tool for this as well.
As soon as he said Chris, I was like, Playout B. Playout B would be the easiest one. Playout B is the easiest one, and it's from our own Jonas Dottel, and it runs on the Mac. I keep on thinking. I think of I still think of Playout B as a Raspberry Pi thing. So but it is Mac, PC, and Raspberry Pi.
I don't know if he wants this necessarily to be public, but he says that the Mac sales are really high.
Yeah, it's a great little playout system for that.
There you go, Courtney.
I was going to ask if the people on the back end, when we do our countdown at the beginning, at the top of the hour, do they build in the 30-second or 20-second or whatever that delay is for YouTube buffering for that, so that it comes on the actual time rather than 30 seconds later?
We used to. We don't do that anymore. So we and the reason is because we have a lot of viewers that are watching in Zoom, and they're getting it in real time. And so it just didn't make sense for us to do that offset. We used to do that. We used to time it, and I do that a lot with my own live streams. When we're streaming to YouTube or any other service, we calculate what the offset is and then apply that offset, to it. But I will say that there are some challenges with that, in the sense that it's usually 20 seconds, and when you try to shift everybody 20 seconds in a production, everybody's confused. They're all looking at clocks, and they're like, I don't understand what we're doing here. So we have learned to, we do it occasionally, but we don't do it as much as we used to.
Yeah, almost all of us here, at least in the back end, and particularly the hosts, are keeping an eye on Atomic Clock, which has a circular thing. And I don't know what I would do if I had to hit 20 seconds to the hour consistently instead of the top of the hour, which is just a lot easier. Backstage stuff. Let's go on to the next question.
And it's our first QR code question coming from Matt L. in Oakland. Does the panel have any favorite stores and websites to source used gear? Looking for an ATEM 1 or 2 ME, and new prices are too expensive. Thank you.
Let's start with Alex. Alex.
I don't know of a lot of ones other than eBay. Like eBay is where you see a lot of these things, and I think that most people are still buying used. Now, there's a lot of options when it comes to used audio that I think are better than eBay, because there's there is Reverb and a bunch of other ones that do really work on it. You're really getting something out of it, and even remember that B&H sells used, as well as Sweetwater, as well as I think BSW and Full Compass. Like all of those, I think, have a used division in them. So when you buy them from someone who knows what they have there, a lot of times they're probably refurbished a little bit better or cleaned up a little bit better than what you're going to get from a seller on eBay.
Yeah, I've had that experience too. Mitchell?
If you can buy from the manufacturer as refurbished, it's going to be as good as anything new. I mean, Apple even has a refurbished site if you go searching for it, and you can save some substantial money. But for the most part, I go to B&H because of the trust factor. They're not the cheapest, but they're consistently fair, and if I've ever had any qualms about it, they'll take it right back.
Chris Fenwick.
Jeffery sells new stuff or used stuff once in a while, so pay attention to Jeffery. He just sold an ATEM.
I did it once.
I got a lawnmower for sale. Does anybody want to buy a lawnmower?
Is it digital or analog? Anyway, Liberty, save us here.
Yeah, site-wise, Facebook Marketplace, you just got to make sure that who you're getting it from. I have sold equipment there. Some of my partners have also bought equipment there, because typically, sometimes there are people who are trying to offload certain things. So just do your due diligence, but Facebook Marketplace being one of them.
Yeah, and we might have a talk at some point, or if somebody wants to throw a question in about it, about what protections you put in there if you're dealing with a person. There are some things, most of these transactions go just fine, but I have heard stories of people, somebody shows up with a box of rocks or something. So I think there are a few little things you have to do. Courtney, what are your thoughts on this?
Yeah, I used to say Craigslist because it's, organized by the city that you're in. And if you live in a production-oriented city, Oakland, I don't know, you're on the edge of San Francisco, so you might get some good hits there. But you got to be careful with Craigslist, meet up with this person to look at it or exchange things in a public place. I don't relish the idea of having strange people from Craigslist show up at my house to show me something or sell me something. So it can be dangerous. Ever since that Craigslist killer guy came out, I've been a little nervous about buying from something where you're meeting up with a total stranger to buy something from them.
That's what Starbucks is for anyway. Jeffrey Powers.
That's any city. Don't have them come to your home. So for me, if you really want to get adventurous, go on eBay and look at the ones for parts. there have been a couple times that I've Frankensteined. I have never Frankenstein at ATEM, of course, but there have been times that I've Frankensteined electronics together, and it worked pretty well. And then there's times that I've bought some stuff, and they said it wasn't working, and then I went and I tested everything. I plugged it in. Maybe it was a capacitor that needed to be changed or something like that, and then I was able to use it for many years.
So we are doing well with our questions today, but we always need more. In fact, we have an entire 2 hours today of Q&A, so that means there's ample room if you have questions you want to get them in. Look down there. You will see the QR code. Shoot it with your phone or something like that, and you can put a question right into the queue where it'll get vetted and taken into the show flow. So, and once it's in the show flow, remember everybody who's in the Mukana system can vote on those questions. Vote them up or down as you choose, and that will determine what we get to next. But we'll have a lot of room for questions today, so we're looking forward to all of your thoughts on what you want us to talk about today. Let's go to the next question.
From Guy Cochran in Seattle, USA, NAB New York News.
Alex, what have you heard out of New York?
I thought that Guy was throwing a Cochran, and then he's not here. Like
He's
I saw
not
the
here.
question, and I was like, "Oh, well, Guy will have some news he wants to talk about," and then he threw a Cochran. It's like the quarterback throwing a pass, and the receivers
Cochran.
on the other. It's an incomplete Cochran. Just threw it to the wrong side of the field.
He ran the wrong pattern.
Yeah,
It's not
exactly.
there.
So I was like, because I was like, oh, I wonder what Guy has seen at NAB or anyone's seen. We weren't able to do the coverage the way we wanted to do it this week, and I've been trying to follow along, and I have to say that I miss our coverage now more than ever. Mostly because there's been so little of it. So there's so little coming out of NAB, and I don't know whether that's just a lack of announcements or just a lack of coverage. But we really haven't seen that much. I think this DJI, of course, the what we just saw with the camera, that is technically released during NAB, but I haven't seen a lot of other announcements, and I'm on press lists, so it's kind of interesting. Yeah, go ahead, Mitchell. Oh, sorry, Bill.
Sorry, no problem.
I'm going. David Brady's been lurking around after hours and showing up with a live walkthrough, but I haven't been on when he was there and catch the commentary. The other thing is that AES is also involved too now, I think as of tomorrow or today. So there's going to be a lot of audio-related things going on, but I haven't seen any big press releases.
David Brady, listen. What is more important, your professional career or your friends here on the show? You can just leave your job and come in during the day here to office hours and tell us about it. No, you don't think so? Anyway, we're hoping for any news we get out of there. So if any of you who are listening have been to NAB in New York and you've seen anything interesting, pop a question into the QR code system or something like that, and we'll take a look at it. We'd love to know what the announcements are, what's the buzz on the show floor, and things like how well attended it is and kind of what the feeling is for things like NAB East. So next question.
Speaking of QR code, here's one from Jens Olson in Sandpoint, Idaho. How powerful is the headphone amp in the Mixpre 3? Is it capable of driving higher impedance hi-fi headphones?
Alex.
I haven't tried that. I don't know if it's designed for doing high impedance headphones. I am actually in the market for that. I'm trying to figure out. I have a pair of high impedance headphones that I'm trying to find a solution for, but I haven't quite figured that out. I'll try to test it there, but I don't think it's a very respectable headphone output, but I don't know if it's really built for that level. Mitchell?
You can spend serious money on high quality headphones. A lot of those are high impedance or electrostatic or whatever. They make a specific, sorry about it's garbage day here. They make very specific headphone amplifiers, and they're very pricey, but I would go to Benchmark if you wanted a specific headphone amplifier that was capable of driving a high impedance one, because that impedance makes a difference.
Yeah. Courtney.
And I'm not sure. I think I remember I have a Mixpre 3 version 1, which there were a lot of complaints about the headphone amplifier not having enough guts or being a little bit noisy. I think they changed the headphone amplifier in version 2, so make sure you get a Mixpre 3 2, because it also has the higher speed DSP for doing sound plugins and sound processing for like noise assist. But I think the version 1 had some problem with the headphones. I'm not sure. Depends on your headphones and what impedance they are, and what levels you have running in. You can you can route a lot of stuff to those headphones. There's extensive routing to the headphone channel. So it depends. It depends on whether you're listening mono, stereo, etc.
Chris Fenwick.
Yeah, I'm just an editor. I don't, solder my own cables or print my own 3D stuff, but I will tell you, it's loud. It's wicked loud. I don't know what all this impedance stuff means, but it's wicked loud. I have mine turned down to like 50%.
Oh, your Mixpre 3 has got plenty of juice to drive. You're in 7506s, is that what I see there? They're pretty efficient.
No, these are MV. These are V6s. These are the
V6s. The early, the early version is the same.
But it's really loud. I don't know what that means.
Okay. Mitchell, you wanted to get back in on this?
Yeah, a little history. When I first got into radio, we wore these things called clevites. They're made out of Bakelite with a metal, plate in it, and they were high impedance. And they were like firing razor blades into your brainstem. So I don't think you want one of those.
They do a closeout from the CB Club or something. I didn't, as old as I am and as far long as I've never had Bakelite headphones. That's really kind of cool and nice.
It's the thing.
Nice. Let's go to the next question.
Lucas Herzog from Mainz has a question from the QR code. I need to play out a video out of a decklink card and its multiple audio channels, 5.1, into a Dante network through DVS. What software in a Mac or PC could pull this off?
Alex, help us out.
I believe that you could do it with QLab. I know you can do it with Softron on the air because we've done it quite a few times in the past. In fact, we do it regularly. So basically, Softron supports the Dante output. I think the most channels we've ever put out over Dante was 37 channels at one time attached to a single piece of video. So the video pushes out. And the reason we did that was because we were doing 514. So not just 5.1, but 5.14. And then we were swapping language channels. So there was like 6 languages that were stacked on top of that. And so what we had to do is you'd send them all out at one time into the Dante network. And then we would peel off the channels we needed in the FSs and put them in so that we had different streams for every language. So anyway, so nothing like doing multiple languages in 5.14. But the only thing that we could do at that level on the Mac was and again, that one over 16, so you can't even embed them into the STI. So anyway, so that is the Softron on the air. It's a little expensive. I think the QLab will do it as well as far as putting out 5.1, but I'm not 100% sure. I haven't tried it.
Hopefully, Lucas, that gives you some areas to explore. Let's dive into the next question.
And we're going to drop another QR code question from Chester Sweeney, Las Vegas, Nevada. Before Noise Assist existed, what was the solution?
Alex, you want to start us off with what you did before that?
Yeah, Cedar. Cedar was the one before that. I mean, there's lots of, there's Dolby noise reduction and there was other things. And I'm talking about live. So, Noise Assist is really something there for live. There's plenty of things that can post-process for noise. But when it comes to doing live noise reduction, we were using a Cedar DNS8 and a series of a bunch of DNS2s. They're both very expensive. The DNS2 I think was $3,000 or $4,000. The DNS8s were in the $7,000 or $8,000 range. And you could use gates and expanders, and there's other things that people would use that were built into everybody's mixers, but they never worked nearly as well. So what we found was what we thought was magical was the Cedar until we had the Noise Assist. I feel like the Noise Assist is much gentler than the Cedar when it comes to how it removes that noise, and it's a lot less robotic when you turn it up.
Mitch Hill.
I think Alex covered it very well there. And you can get Cedar on some of the higher end noise assist devices. What are they? Sound devices. But my question to you, Alex, is which is truly better, Cedar or Noise Assist?
Noise Assist, 100%. Like it's better, like it is, and I spend a lot of money on both of them. and I've had them both in the same place at the same time. We've put signals through them all. It's not. I wouldn't say that it's not close, but it's pretty clear that the Noise Assist is better. And where it really happens is in all the little transients at the bottom. So when things are really quiet in the Cedar, you hear this, and you can hear what we would call audio aliasing in the Cedar when it's turned way up. And whereas the Noise Assist is much less likely to do that from our experience.
Courtney.
Yeah, and then before Cedar and Noise Assist in production recording, even in the analog days, we used to use A2s and ADs to go, "Hey, quiet on the set! and turn off that refrigerator.
If you heard
That was our
everybody with
noise
headphones
reduction
flinch here.
And have the cops outside hold the traffic, all right? Okay.
That's noise assistant AD.
It's not volume assist, it's noise assist. I will say that everything you've heard from me in the last 9 months here has been through a Cedar plug-in on my Universal Audio Apollo Solo, and I've done my last 3 audiobooks through it from this desk, and I've had nothing but really good results, no matter whether I'm being quiet or loud. It just knocks out everything except my voice, and my voice is still pretty much my voice. So I've had really good experience with it. But that's as a plug-in on the Universal Audio Apollo Solo, which is using an onboard DSP to do the processing. Unlike, I think, those old hardware units, I think they've gone a little farther. It is still a $300 plug-in, so it's not a super cheap thing, but it's been really worth it for me. Chris Fenwick, you want to get in on this again?
Yeah, I'm sitting in a parabolic dish of computers and fans and 100 terabytes of data right on the other side of the monitors, and there's a dorm room mini fridge 10 feet away.
So lots of noise sources.
Yeah, when I take my headphones off, I'm amazed. It's like, wow, how do I work here? Oh yeah, noise assist in my headphones.
Yeah, it has gotten better because I never used to be able, particularly the Neumann TLN 103 that I use for the audiobooks. I replaced this mic with that because it is much more sensitive and has much more nuance. And the fact that I can use it here at this desk with the little tiny fans and the washing machine down the hall, and it's completely acceptable for all those audiobooks, has astonished me. The things are getting better in this. Mitchell, you had some thoughts.
Yeah, I just wanted to flip the question just a little bit. If you're doing it in real time, all the suggestions you just heard. If you're doing it in post, there are lots of plugins available for that, preferably the Izotope line.
Yeah, Izotope has really good noise reduction and a lot of other really great tools. I use 3 or 4 of them, like Deplosive and pop filters and things like that on the audiobook stuff that I do, and it just makes it automated. I can take a 10-hour thing and process it all in 5 minutes and get rid of fricatives, plosives, and things like that. Really works beautifully. So we've talked about this a little bit. Let's move on to the next question.
From Jack Rupel in Breckenridge, Colorado, Type-C to Type-C audio signal adapter 4406, small rig, is it USB 3.1?
Alex, do you know?
So what he's asking about is this little turnaround here. So this is the Type-C to Type-C, which I don't think is out yet. It's not very expensive. I think it will have to be, and I don't know for sure. I don't know why you would build one of these if you weren't able to do that, because the problem that you would have here is that you wouldn't be able to pass. It's designed specifically so you can hook your SSDs to your camera. And so if it's not 3.1, it seems like that would undermine it. And all it is here, this little turnaround here, I believe, is just going to be cables. Like this is just connectors going from one to the other. So I don't think it has to be anything because it's not designed to negotiate. So I think that I think you're going to find that it is 3.1 compatible.
Compatible, yeah.
And so I think that that's my guess because I just don't see how they'd release it without that. But it might not be, and it's in pre-order right now, and evidently your risk is very low at $6.90. So you might you're going to have to put off those 2 lattes that you were going to get, or 1 now with inflation. But I think you're probably okay. But I think that it would have to be, because why would you make it if it wasn't? Because your drive wouldn't be fast enough to use it.
We all saw that fluoroscope picture of the connector on the Thunderbolt cable from Apple that looked like it had 300 micro components inside of it. At $6.95, I can guarantee you this isn't that
less now with less diodes. Yeah, exactly.
Less diodes, less things. Jeffrey Powers, you had a point.
3 words for you: hot glue gun. When I built fly kits for COVID remote shoots, the one thing that always concerned me was adapters, because you're basically stuffing everything into a cage, and that's what small rig is doing, and they don't know where that USB plug is going to be. So, and I know that's not what this is meant for, but in some cases that's where it's going to be used. So when you plug in an adapter to a plug, it's best to have a way to be able to secure it. And I don't think that maybe somebody should make a little adapter to go onto the adapter that'll lock that USB in. So when you throw that into a case and somebody pulls it out, it'll probably pull it out by the cord and then put it onto a tripod. At least it's not that's not going to be the problem.
Wonder if you could adapt something from tether tools. They're for the DSLR shooters use them a lot for those little tiny connectors that go in. They have little things that you can attach to your camera that provides strain relief so that things don't pull out. So that might be a place to look if you want to hybrid up something, but hopefully that helps. Let's go to the next question.
From Daniel Patridge in Rochester, Minnesota. Anyone fork over big bucks for the Mac Studio and a large empty shell yet, aka the new Mac Pro tower? I see Apple has refurbs of base models for $1,000 off original price. Would that tempt you now at that price?
That's an interesting question, Daniel. Let's see what Alex thinks. Alex?
I usually buy ones knowing what project I'm going to work on them with, and I just haven't had a project that required us to go down that path yet. So I haven't bought a tower. The $1,000 is probably still not enough to get one right now, but I am waiting to see. I probably will make the move. I do have things where I want to have cards, especially one of the things I'm really interested in is the idea of having, building a more dense kit that does stuff like office hours where we have a bunch of cards in there and are able to tie everything back together and having one machine that does a lot of those things. And so, but we probably waited for the M3 to see, what we get, which we may come out as early as next on Monday.
Yeah. Mitchell.
Yeah, it seems like a signal that something might be coming down the pike, perhaps on Monday when they have the scary, fast Mac episode coming up. You were going to say something?
I was going to say, it's going to be really interesting to see what happens on Monday. I'm going to be actually on Twit on Monday, but what I'll do is I'm going to come right into after hours right afterwards. So I'm going to, we'll be on covering doing it at 5 o'clock. I imagine it'll be half an hour long. I don't think it's going to be a full hour, but it might be. We'll see.
Go ahead.
What's interesting to see is whether Apple starts to sync all the hardware. Long ago, they used to release all the hardware together, like all the, here's our new chips, here's what they look like on all the machines, and it's been this weird TikTok of things happening all different times, and it's very confusing to have M2s and M3s and all this other stuff, and I think that there's going to be some point in the next year or two where Apple syncs all of that up, and this might be the time that they do it, but we'll see. But I think within the next 2 years, they'll sync everything up and going, we have a new chip. This is what the new chip looks like across all of the desktop, all the Mac machines, and here's how they work. They might leave the Pro one out, but at some point, it's weird to have. It's weird if they release an M3 for the for the laptops. It's weird to have the laptops be faster than the tower. It's a weird space to be in. And I think Apple has to correct that eventually.
I'm only going to be disappointed if, since it's Halloween Eve, we don't see Craig Federighi as Frankenstein's monster with fabulous hair.
Craig's got to dress up.
There you go. Mitchell Hill?
I was going to continue to say that the Mac Pro looks very tempting. I don't really have a need for decklink and all those things, but the 1,000 off is in the right direction. But it matters little because I'm suffering from Italian disease. My funds are low, so I can't buy one anymore.
Chris Fenwick.
I think Apple's been sort of enjoying. I know it's frustrating for the tech elite that are always shopping for the fastest. But I think they're getting a lot of mileage out of rotating the chips through the product line. I love watching my family because they don't understand me at all. They don't understand what I do. And they're just like, man, I want a computer. They literally don't care. They really don't care. My daughter wanted the pretty pink one. That's all she cared about. And frankly, I'm not kidding. She goes, can you help me get a computer? I go, let's go get a computer. I go, well, do you want this chip or that? She goes, I just want the pink one. And so the vast majority of people buy their computers that way, I believe. Even Mac people. Most people, they don't care that much. And for Apple to get all that mileage out of multiple rollouts throughout the year, I think I don't think they're going to sync it up.
Alex.
Again, I think the reason they'll sync it up is because the Mac is such a small part of their business that having it, the releases are real, they're stressful, and so I think that the cadence that could make a lot of sense for Apple within the next couple of years is to have the iPhone and Watch come out in September, the hardware come out in late October, early November. The iPads be released in February or March, and the AR and VR and whatever else they want to talk about there comes out during WWDC. Then they get kind of into a quarterly cadence. And I think that that makes more sense for Apple than, because what happens is they don't do big releases. Like even now, look at this. This is not they didn't bring the press in. They're going to release a bunch of stuff with video only. They're not, it's not the Mac is not a big deal for them from a cash perspective. So they're like, here you go. So I don't know if they want to do more of those events, for that, because it's not, if they thought they were really important, they'd bring the press in to look at them and oogle over them, and they're not doing that. So I think that they're just continuing to keep everybody happy.
But if you look at the history of what Apple said for why they got out of doing Macworld, or wait, what was it called? What was the trade show called?
Yeah,
Macworld. They said, and why they got out of NAB. They didn't want to be beholden to the cadence of, there's a show. What are we going to show?
But again, they don't have to be beholden to this cadence. I mean, they could decide, we're not going to do this. We're not ready yet to release all of these. We'll release it the thing is what they don't have is somebody else's date to be caught up in. They still have their own control over their own date, so they can always push it out. But I think that from a user perspective, it just is a clearer message to have the same chip and show how that chip, because what's really interesting is they actually are getting pretty good at, I love the elegance of the studio. The Mac Pro is the studio with extra peripheral support. And they're very clear about it. Like if you get the two of them are going to go just as fast, but if you need cards and you need more lanes, you buy this one. And if you need this, you buy this one. And I think it's clear, but I think it's pretty clear between the Mac Pros. I think that the Mac Mini sits in a place that the Mac Studio doesn't. It's a little complicated at the top of the Mac Mini and the bottom of the Studio, but the extra fan and everything, because they otherwise they're very close. And so anyway, those are the kind of. But I think Apple, just being able to say we have a new chip and saying this is how it expresses itself across the entire line, I just think is a more unified message than what they're doing right now. And it's just again, I think it's confusing to have MacBook Pros that are faster than Mac Pros, which if they do this thing and they've done that in the past by accident. They did that with the G3s because the G3s, had the G3 team was even showing the G4 team in Motorola that, hey, we put this bigger cache in and we think it might affect performance, and the G4 team ignored it. And so the G3 came out way faster than the G4. And so they did that, and that lasted for a little while and almost killed Apple because they had done power computing and everything. They had the way that they had set up their thing, that it didn't work well. So Apple did it once and it wasn't very, and they've done it now again. And I think that they, we'll see what happens on Monday, but I still think that within 2 years they'll sync these and they'll just release all the Mac products will all get released on the same day. It may not be Monday, but it will be sometime. Yeah.
Mitchell?
Yeah, I think Chris has got a point because never underestimate the power of the consumer to make decisions that are totally unexpected about a device. I remember when Philips and Sony announced the compact disc. Yes, I was around then. I'm old. It was they did the research and then they released research, and the people bought the compact disc not because it sounded great or that it was convenient. It's because it was pretty.
Yeah, well, never underestimate the power of fashion in marketing. Courtney Gooden.
Yeah, I think you're both missing it. I don't think they're going to do a hardware update to the M3 without this, and with a little notice, as Alex said, and without the press being invited to lay hands upon to review. Maybe you're all being pranked. And noticing the timing of it being October 30th, I think they're going to release new cases for the Mac Mini, the Mac-O-Lantern, because it just comes in this new case. It has cooling with the eyes and the teeth built in there, and so it works a lot cooler. So I think that's what's going to be the Mac-O-Lantern.
Nouveau iMacs in candy corn colors. Wait for it. Alex.
And again, I think that the strongest argument for it is specifically that it keeps, for the consumer, it keeps it simple. Like they understand how all these things fit together. And I think that's the one thing that Apple has has had in the past that sometimes it's lost its way in the 90s, but is that you clearly understand which one you should get based on what you want. They've got a couple too many, in my opinion, too many options right now. But I think that they can clarify that, I think, a little bit. And it's clearer if they put them all out at the same time and explain how they're all different, as opposed to having them released in different cadences. So we'll see how that goes.
Yeah, it'll be interesting. We've spent a good little bit of time on there, which pushed me back from remembering that we are doing 2 hours of question and answer today. We have a solid list of questions for the second hour, but we always can use more. So please, if you're interested, you have a topic, if something in this discussion kind of sparked your imagination and you want to talk about that, then put a question in. We'll be happy to get to it. And remember, those of you who are in the Mukana system, vote on those questions. Let us know what you're most interested in hearing about. Let's go to the next question.
And it's coming in from Dave Troutman in Edmonton, Canada. Has anyone else noticed the new feature in Pages for iPads called Presentation, which turns your text into a teleprompter with speed and size controls and a new icon in the top left corner?
I haven't seen that, Alex. Had you noticed that?
No,
that's pretty cool.
So that looks really cool. I admit that I don't do presentations very often from my iPad, so I'm not. My iPad is part of my development process, but generally it is above and below it. Because there's a lot of screens available in Keynote. So that's the other thing to know, is that Keynote, when you're on a Mac, will display. There's a presenter display. There's a couple other displays that are available. So I kind of tend to use those displays up, and as a result, end up using a Mac to do my presentations. But I'm going to check this out. This looks really interesting.
I'm trying to load it right now. It was offline on my iPad, so it's downloading now. Courtney?
Yeah, can you tell me if it hooks up to an external display and inverts that display that it's putting out as its prompter?
I don't know.
Now let's see how long it takes to load up.
Gives us a thumbs up. Maybe he's got it running, huh?
Yeah, everybody wants a teleprompter now. If it's all the rage. Courtney, I think that digital teleprompters are going to be all the rage.
I'm getting out of the teleprompter business at just the right time. I got a teleprompter service company for sale. Anybody wants one?
And Courtney was only 40 years ahead of everybody's time.
Oh, it just gave me what's new in Pages. Is it low? The things. We're going to go on to the next question. If I get this up and running, we'll circle back to it. So next question.
And it's coming into us from Hasmukh Kajar in Cape Town, South Africa. Love my ZoomISO workflow. Now with corporates forced to use Teams, can we have a Teams channel in office hours Discord? Appears I have to learn NDI or have the pin farm to deliver same Zoom experience with Teams. Anyone can do a lab to come to speed with Teams.
Jeffrey?
Yeah, I'd love to see that happen, especially with with Teams and Meet. And, a couple weeks ago, we talked about Brandon's system on how he put together a remote system, and he's not using ZoomISO because he has to bring in Teams, because he has to bring in Google Meet, and so it'd be probably a good second hour to kind of do the hybrid virtual system.
Alex?
Yeah, and this was the original reason that we built the system that we have in 090, which is 16 PCs, and those PCs could put anything in there and go back and forth. And because the audio and the video were completely out of band, and they were all being delivered back to it, it didn't really matter what we were running. And we've done that in the past. The way that we've handled some Teams events, just to kind of put it out there, is that you have to know whether the participants, the speakers, have to be in Teams or just the viewers. So if the viewers are the only ones if it's a delivery to Teams, to a Teams event, we run it in Zoom. so we run it we put all the speakers into Zoom, and you'd be surprised. A lot of them, I can't use Zoom. And if you push a little harder and explain to them why it's going to be, you're going to be higher resolution and the conversation is going to be more fluid. But if you wanted to use Teams, you can. There's a little bit of gaslighting that can be done there. Teams is totally fine for, run of the mill kind of, not very good presentations, because you'll be at a lower resolution. The audio won't be the same quality. Latency will be higher. But other than that, it'll be fine. And you'd be surprised how many people are like, well, how do I make it better? And then you go, well, we use ZoomISO, and then we just feed it back into Teams. So then what you do is you join Teams with your system, and then you output your final program into Teams. So you just have to decide. Now, sometimes you do have people for whatever security reasons, or they're Microsoft or something like that have to use Teams, and then you have to go back into the dark ages because Teams is dramatically behind. And I used to say that Zoom was way ahead and Teams was coming up behind them. I don't think that that's the case anymore. I think that Teams has just completely been jacked, and the one that is now the heir apparent to the number 2 position, I would say, is actually I'll come back to it. The name, literally, WebEx. Just ran away from my head. So WebEx is probably, they're the ones that are moving the fastest right now. The velocity is higher in WebEx than anybody else that I've seen. And I have a company that uses a lot of WebEx, and so I'm in meetings in those, and you just I've watched the progression over the last year and a half, and it's amazing. so they're still way behind, but it's an amazing move. They put a lot of money into that.
Chris Fenwick.
My estimation would be that what is happening between Teams, Zoom, and maybe WebEx is very analogous to what was happening with OSs in the early 90s. And many of us really believed that the Mac OS was far superior, and we dove into it headlong, full commitment. And yet corporations chose Windows for some weird reason, and Courtney probably has some good reasons. And what was happening, because I was doing these shows teaching this stuff to IT people before they were called IT people, is they were literally being told the best way to get control of your network is, 1, get rid of all the Macs, and then we'll figure out the other problems. And so that is happening now, at least with our clients, where they're being told, we don't care about your ZoomISO, we don't care about your resolution, we don't care about any of those things. IT told us we have to use this, so we're going to use it. And this is why I've been saying, to Zoom, it's one thing to make the best technical product, but you have to run the politics side of the game too. You have to be dealing with the companies to convince them that your tool is better for the other reasons besides it's just technically better. It doesn't matter. I really believe the Mac was always better, but it almost got squashed out of existence in 1997, right? Like what, we were 3 months from bankruptcy. Because
but the one thing I will say about that is the reason that Apple was 3 months away was not because they got squashed out. It's because they were trying to be like Microsoft. So they were trying to provide a different version of a Mac for everything. The chaos that was created by Apple trying to be something that they weren't. So the number one danger, I think, for Zoom right now is trying to be Microsoft and trying to add all these features that none of us need or want. And so the problem is that what Zoom had the opportunity to do, and they're not doing right now, is they had the opportunity to be the best platform to do video conferencing. And what they've done is they've watered it down and added a bunch of stuff that most of us, we open that window and we go, no. And we all shut it. And so they have a whole thing that no one wants, and they're probably making some impact. But the thing is that they're losing their focus on being a great a great video conferencing app, that can run conferences and everything else. And there's a big piece of the bottom of that pyramid of people who don't care about Teams or don't even know why the Teams, getting too focused on the top of that pyramid. The top of that pyramid, we have to remember that there's a lot of small businesses and small, medium-sized businesses that you want to make sure that they're using it and they're not falling into that process. And because I think that because I don't know anybody. I mean, I'm sure that there are people out there that are really excited about all these tools that Zoom has been adding, but I don't know any of them. I don't know. I everybody I talk to is just like, oh, this other window pops up and then I shut it. And then I go back to what I'm doing. And people know Zoom as a certain thing. And I think they're going to have a hard time. And I think that if they can keep on developing those goofy little tools, but I think that if they don't stay focused on continuing, they got to hold that line of being the best video conferencing place to go, the easiest and the best one to do, which I think that the Liminal team has given them the opportunity to do, to be that. But I also think when they say people should come back to work, when they do not very good, hybrid events, when they do those kind of things, they're not leading that path. They're following the old way, and I think that them following the old way is they're not committing to what they have. And so I think that's a real challenge for Zoom. And I think it'll be really, for someone who's very committed to Zoom and doing a lot of stuff in Zoom, both professionally and here in office hours, it worries me, that a lot of things that we were promised, like double-ended recording and so on and so forth, that was going to move things forward, haven't occurred. So it worries me that they're losing focus, and especially when you start to watch a company like WebEx pick up speed, very, very fast. I mean, Zoom is losing contracts because WebEx closed the distance like that. So Zoom is competing for contracts that it lost because it wasn't as clear a winner as it was a year before. And it was, and so it's we're talking big contracts. They're losing those contracts because they aren't the clear winner anymore, because WebEx closed the distance enough to hang on to those contracts. And that's what they should watch, to do that, because the other stuff is, fine, but it's, they have to be the clear winner, and they're not anymore.
Mitchell?
I think the thing that keeps them up at night is that they're trying to be a platform, not necessarily a service, to provide as a way to do these things that we do. So because of their platform development, people don't quite understand that, and they're taking their eye off the prize. And by the way, can somebody explain what a pin farm is? Is that scraping?
Yeah.
Yeah. Multiple machines.
You have a bunch of machines, and you're pinning the ones that you want to use in a given show. And even I don't use pin farms anymore. I mean, I haven't used pin farms in a long time, but we used to use pin farms for build pin farms for Hangouts, long ago. But it's being able to lock onto the pin the people that you want to show at any given time in your program. So you may have as many as 10 or 15 of them there. Then you're kind of pinning people, or usually it was usually 3 to 6, but it could be more, where you can lock each one of them as a participant in that to the thing and pulling those out. And it's a horrible way to live. Like, it's just, such a horrible production pipeline. But we used to.
Courtney, you want to bring us home?
Yeah. In response to Chris's diatribe, a lot of the reason that corporations went with the Windows version as opposed to the Mac version is because of open architecture. And Mac was a closed system, and you couldn't, develop your own hardware, and developing your own software was much more difficult on the Mac platform. The Mac ran a lot better for all the Mac people out there because it had limited hardware. There was only their software, their operating system would only run on their computers, and their software supported their video cards, and their software supported their I/O, and et cetera, et cetera. And so that's why the corporate world and the industrial world and the all the medical world moved to the Windows platform, because it was open architecture. They could build their own custom solutions to whatever computing needs they needed, and still run it under the common software operating system. And I think this is a problem that happened with Zoom, is that when they brought Liminal in, they started doing Mac-only type of software. Their improvements, their hot new software only worked on iOS, or only worked on the Mac operating system. And that kind of shot themselves in the foot, because they're cutting off 80% of the market, of the worldwide market, in computers and desktops. So that may be why it forced a lot of people into Teams, because they just didn't have that much of the market. And so, a corporation has to pick one way or the other, because if they can't pick both, if it's not interoperable. So they force people to use Teams. It may not be better, because it has to support a wide variety of video cards, a wide variety of CPUs from different manufacturers. And it's much tougher to roll out software that's compatible across all that stuff, but they've managed to somewhat do it and make it compatible amongst all the different hardware manufacturers. But it is much more difficult to do. And that's why you see people claiming that the Mac is far much better, but it's much more limited.
All right. I had pages up for teleprompting, but we're out of time. We're going to have to do the transition at the top of the hour. And before we do that, I have to say tomorrow on the show, Zoomtopia Revisited. Our friends Andy Carluccio, Jonathan Cocatello, Sam Kakaiko from Zoom. They'll be stopping by to dish on some of the backstage stagecraft that took place at Zoomtopia. It was a huge show and a big IMAX-style IMAG-style graphics-driven thing. I understand Unreal Engine was involved, so we'll be talking about that tomorrow. We're going to take a very, very short break here at the top of the hour as we make our transition. And when we come back, I'll talk just for a second about this Pages thing. Welcome back to the second hour of our show. As you heard in the beginning, we are doing 2 hours of Q&A today. In the tail end of the last hour, we had a question come in about what Apple has done in terms of adding some basic teleprompter-like things to Pages. So I will pop up my iPad running Pages here, and you can either move to this little icon on the top or left, but the ellipsis here, one of the new things is presenter mode, and it puts you into something that looks a little bit like a teleprompter. And as a matter of fact, if you type on this double A up there, you can see auto scroll. You can turn it on and determine the speed at which it will scroll. I don't see anything on my initial look here in terms of flipping or do anything actually for teleprompting, but for a basic iPad prompter, that's there. It looks like we have some text choices in terms of backgrounds and things like that. You can check fonts, and you have some line spacing and margin controls. So it's a very basic kind of non-flippable, at least from what I could see at my real quick examination of it, but it's built into Pages. So this is another kind of feature you get with the software you've been using about. There we go. Thank you for your patience, and let us dive into our next question for the second half of the show.
First up, Jeff Veely from Henderson, Texas. When adding a second internet provider, what's the best way to connect it for failover? Do you use a switch or plug both providers into a router?
Jeffrey Powers, what say you?
Well, you can use it in a few different ways. Two main ways to put together your internet. One is through what's called bonding, and the other one's called this SD-WAN. Think of bonding as the video or whatever. Part of it takes the high road, part of it takes the low road, and see who gets to double and perform. SD-WAN is a little bit different because it combines the two internets, but it can switch it out. So, like for instance, I have SD-WAN here. And right now, my video for Zoom is going through one internet connection. And I've defined that whenever there's a Zoom call, it goes through the fastest connection. And then if I have, like, let's say, security cameras, all my security cameras will go through the other internet connections. So if both of them converge together trying to ask for the bandwidth, it doesn't get a bottleneck in the connection altogether. So you can definitely run them separate. You don't need to have, you can have two separate routers and then just kind of say, okay, all of these security cameras are on that router and my Zoom's on this router. But if you have one computer, you can't switch back and forth between the two. It would be impossible. So those are the two main protocols that you would probably use to bring two or more internets into the house. Because with my SD-WAN, I can also connect up my phone, tether it to the router, and then create a third connection if I really need stability.
Alex?
Yeah, if we're doing Zoom or any kind of WebRTC, we don't bond ever because we get the jitter becomes a problem, and we have issues with interframe problems. So you want to be careful of that. Usually the routers that we use, Meraki, Ubiquiti, PepWave, all of those have the ability to have an Internet 1, Internet 2, and simply have a rollover from one to the other. And so that is what you want to do. Usually there is a little bit of a gap, so it's not going to roll over seamlessly, because if it did, it would bounce back and forth. So it needs to. What it'll do is you'll see it drop, and usually it's for about 1 or 2 seconds. It'll drop and then come right back up again. But we've been using Meraki stuff for a long time. That's what it's designed to do, and we've had to do it. And when we're testing it so that we understand what the behavior is, once we've done it, we unplug our main internet and let it roll over so we can see what it's going to do on the stream, so we understand what the behavior is going to be. But that is, and my recommendation is to get a router that does have two WAN connections and is built to swing from one to the other.
That takes care of our first question. Next question.
Douglas Carmichael in. What factors probably contributed to Apple's services increasing in price? Was it higher costs from the content providers?
Alex, what do you think?
Unfortunately, I think it's because they could. No, so Netflix took the hit by doing it at a higher rate. And I think that it did two things. One is that it allows, when someone goes higher, it allows everybody else to, like if you're going to slide under it, you wait a week after someone else does something unpopular, and then you go, oh yeah, by the way, we're going to move up too, to get a little bit more money out of that. And also it allows Apple to promote the fact that their service is much less expensive than Netflix. So by having it go out, you go, oh, they increased their price by $2, but it's still half of what Netflix is right now. And so at a higher quality. So, and by the way, the Apple TV Plus, the video is, I would say, somewhere between 50 and 100% higher quality video than what Netflix does at twice the price. So Apple was able to kind of twist that a little bit for Netflix, but it also means that they're able to garner just a little bit more money out of everybody.
Yeah, and they didn't raise it a ton. I do note that the big Premier package now with 2 terabytes of cloud storage and iCloud, $29.95 a month. That includes essentially every service they have: News, Arcade, Apple Music, Apple TV Plus, the whole thing. Apple Fitness even, which I didn't think I was ever going to go near, but I've actually used a couple of times. So, I think everybody's going to kind of wanting to be your portal into entertainment and info and stuff like that. And this is their play toward that. Let's go to the next question.
And it's a QR code question coming into us from Mariale Shusha Mera from Webelow, Missouri. Jeffrey, I can understand that you don't feel you are an expert on eBay pricing, though I disagree based on your expert advice. But what price did your gear sell for? There's lots of ATEM 4Ks marked complete in eBay, but not as many actually marked sold.
Jeffrey, how much of your experience do you want to share?
So first of all, I'll answer that second part first. If you watched yesterday's show, Guy talked about how you can search for items that have been sold. And down on the bottom, when you go through the search criteria, there's 2 boxes. There's one that says completed items. There's one that says sold items. What happens is when you sell an item, you have a certain amount of period to ship the item, and then the person receives it. So if something like, for instance, my item was sold on Friday, I had until it was yesterday to actually ship it before the deal would go south. And then it takes 4 or 5 days for that person to receive the item. And then at that point, it's completely marked sold. Other than that, it's still in a completed status there. For the price, I'm not going to tell you exactly what it is, but I will tell you that the brand new production 4K was $1,800, and you can still buy it brand new. Used started at about $1,200, and eBay's, especially anything that was gently used, was about $600 to $700. Since I'm coming into a move, I decided to go around the $500 mark. And once again, I felt that was best because when I bought it, I had a specific use for it. It did the job, and I got paid to do that. So I got my money back on that item, and now I'm going to give it to somebody who's, like I said, he's building fly packs for remote productions. So, and of course, he's then selling them on eBay for around $3,000. But there's more parts in there than just the production 4K. So I'm really happy that it's going to get extra use out of it. So, so hopefully that answers the question at best. Yeah.
Absolutely. Thank you for all of that. Let's go to the next question.
From J.J. Mukana, San Rafael, California. A local municipality had a rather difficult Zoom event that is normally broadcast weekly, for which Mukana would have been a much better interface. Where is public info and function housed to present to these opportunities?
Alex?
They have to contact us. We're working on making it more scalable, but right now it's still kind of handcrafted for each partner. It's still in beta and still kind of handcrafted, and we really adjust things. The good news is that we make a lot of adjustments for the partners that we work with, but the hard news is we don't have a lot publicly there because we just can't handle the flow yet. So we're working on a couple extra tools that will allow us to replicate very fast. Those are probably a couple months away.
Let's go to the next question.
Jeffery Powers in Madison, Wisconsin, and here on our panel at the Qualcomm Summit, they announced the X Elite Laptop System on Chip that runs faster than Apple Silicon and takes less power. Who's thinking of a new vMix machine?
Nobody raised their hand, but we have talked about that this morning, and I think there's a lot of interest in it. This is coming out immediately, I understand, or at least it was announced yesterday or the day before, and Apple is coming out with some talk, and there's some consideration that they may have new chips as well. So regardless, the industry is being driven forward. Alex, what say you about all this?
Now, Jeffrey, if you throw a cock run, you have to run the route. That's all I'm saying. You have to run the route. If you're going to throw one to yourself, you have to.
Actually, I threw
run the route.
I threw for Preto, and then Preto had to leave. So,
okay.
But I can talk about it. Yeah, definitely.
So Preto didn't run the route. I see how it is, or he ran a different route, evidently. So
You'll have to get a popcorn.
Yeah, exactly. So I think part of it is let's see. I'd like to see it actually working first.
Yeah, Courtney.
Yeah, they did announce a couple of things. They announced is, of course, this has a new architecture for the built-in video chip that is on the die. So we'll have to wait and see if the developer packages, if the developers bite on this and start to write code directly to the hardware. They did say that Microsoft, in their deal with Microsoft, that Microsoft will debut all of the Office apps in native mode for this new silicon from Qualcomm, so that they will be running fairly fast when these new laptops become available next year sometime. So we'll have to wait and see if the developers pick up the torch and run with it and write to the native code of that particular hardware to see if something like vMix is going to come out on that version, and a native version. That could be very, very fast.
Jeffrey?
Yeah, Lenovo was first out of the gate to say, hey, we're going to have one of these Qualcomm X Elite chips into our systems. It was codenamed Orion, because there was a little bit of confusion on that. So it'll be very interesting to see what happens. It's like the antivirus wars, of course. One day that one chip is going to do better than the other one. The next day the other one's going to do better. But Apple's also been the tortoise that likes to not push the envelope too much, because they have tried and true, and then they'll eventually pull ahead for a while. But have this new competition to Intel, AMD, and Apple is going to be very interesting. And I know Microsoft years back they pulled out of ARM chips because of the least amount of popularity, and now they're back and they came back in. So we'll see what happens on here, but it's definitely going to make our machines faster. It's going to make our machines more powerful and lighter in the long run. And I'll tell you something, I didn't like to run any type of software switching off of a laptop because of the processor. I'm really excited to see this come, because I might just start using laptops once again to do any type of software switching.
My whole system is built around a laptop here, and it's been really remarkably solid. Alex?
Yeah, I think that it's going to be, I think it's great for the industry to see, a lot more competition and a drive to move faster forward. The real challenge is going to be the fragmentation of the PC market and how much you can take advantage of it. It doesn't have kind of the iron fist that Apple does to kind of pull things together and have people support a abstraction like metal. And so I think that's going to be the real challenge to see what we do it. But I do think that companies like vMix will probably figure out ways to really wring the most out of the system. So I think in isolated areas, I think you'll see that pretty quickly across the board. I think that the performance might be a little rougher, but it's really good to see it happen.
Certainly is causing a lot of kerfluffle here in San Diego, because Qualcomm's based here, and then Apple has a surprisingly large presence in this area, and I think there are constantly people moving back and forth between them. So it's a big economic engine for this part of Southern California. Next question.
Peter Moore from Auckland, New Zealand, asking, didn't Native Instruments buy or acquire Izotope?
I've heard that. I just know that Izotope has been a pretty stable and solid part of my workflow for the past 4 or 5 years. Alex, what do you know something about?
Yes, June.
Okay. They did in June.
Yeah, they did. They did.
Okay.
I don't have anything else. That was the question. That's the answer. But yes, they did. They did acquire them in June.
Okay. So far, that looks like, well, I'm trying to think, have they done any updates since I've been heavily into it? I didn't use a lot of Izotope products before I started the audiobook work, but now I use 4 or 5 of them for every book. And they've been really stable, and I've had no problems with any of them. So I thumbs up from my side of just as an end user. And let's go to the next question.
Alexander Knight in Port Coquitlam, British Columbia, Canada. Have any panelists tested the new full-frame Blackmagic camera? And if so, what do you think, and how does it compare to the Super 35 sensor version?
Alex?
Haven't gotten tested yet. Hopefully we'll be able to get our hands on a test unit. The problem is I already have 11 of the Super 35s, so I got to find a reason to borrow the full frame one. So we'll see if we can borrow one to take a look at it. But I don't have a business reason to get one yet. So that's been the challenge, and I think I haven't seen anybody use it in the wild yet. It does look like an impressive camera. I mean, it is, and I think that in that Blackmagic environment, it looks like they fixed a lot of the things that we want. I think that if we can see, the next step is, for filmmakers is global. I think they're kind of caught halfway between, if we had a global shutter or great autofocus, it would change how everybody looked at it. You got to have one or the other. So I think I think you could do a lot of great stuff with it, but I think that those are the two things that you don't have to do both of them, but you got to do one of them, in my opinion, to kind of go down the next path. But as an interview camera, and as there's a lot of things that you can do with it. I think that it looks like a pretty impressive solution, especially for the price.
Fair to say your wallet is medium warm and getting hotter over time?
Medium warm, I think that the thing that I'm most interested in the Blackmagic cameras is the open API for controlling these cameras. And so being able to control a lot of the new cameras remotely over an Ethernet cable, super excited about that. Like that's something that I'm far more excited about specifically than specifically the full frame as it sits there.
Mitchell?
My DP, Tom Shustak, he's a fellow Sony fanboy. He would never consider using a Sony autofocus in a film. But for this, he likes it.
Well, no, that's what I said. There's definitely, I mean, in when we do productions, we don't put lenses on that would be autofocus. And so the autofocus is not a key. I mean, if you use an Arri or a Venice or whatever, you're not using autofocus. The main thing is at the price point that you're at, though, you're talking about a lot of social media users, and they need it. I think I've talked in the past, I talked to a social media, someone who's got millions of followers, and asked her why she uses Sony instead of Blackmagic, and she just immediately came back with autofocus. I don't have time to try to figure that out, and so that's the real challenge, and especially when you start wanting to have that YouTube-y kind of like what I have is a very short depth of field. I found myself, the reason I switched over to a Sony for my webcam was because I felt myself rocking back and forth trying to stay in focus, where I just wanted it to stay in focus. And so in the short depth of field world, you do that. As soon as you go into real production, then you are not doing autofocus at all. So it's not that big of a deal, except for the fact that without global shutter, you do lose a little of what you would without a global shutter. You kind of and the problem is there are global shutters at $6,000, $7,000. The red Komodo is at $6,000 with a global shutter. So there is a need for Blackmagic to kind of look at that next as they go through that process.
Alex, I thought you got the Sony because I recommended it.
I know you thought that, but it's not right. I knew the autofocus.
I will just say there's always been a traditional fork in the cinematography world between EFP and ENG. ENG was electronic news gathering, and you go out and shoot whatever's there, and it's run and gun, and you're just trying to capture content quickly. The EFP, electronic field production, is very much what Alex is talking about, and all the movies are done under that kind of thing. It is, we have a script, we have shots, they're storyboarded, we're going to go and execute our shots, and the cinematographer or camera operator would choose their lens depending on the shot that they needed to execute.
Well,
you never see a zoom lens on those cameras ever.
You also have the luxury of you might see a zoom lens, but anyway, but you also have the luxury of having a focus puller, like somebody who is just they're only focused on that, they're only doing the focus, and that's and we've had folks here talking about that in the past. Right. The number one reason I have to admit that I moved to a Sony is because Greg Gibson kept on sending me texts that say you're out of focus, hey, you're just a little out of focus, and He just wore me down. Like Greg Gibson is like sending me these things like, you're just a little out of focus. Like, it looks really good. You're a little out of focus. You look really great, but you're a little out of focus. And I was just like, and then I go back and look at it. I just couldn't take it any longer. Greg is Mitchell impacted my choice, but talking to some YouTubers and so on and so forth. But Greg was the one that pushed me over the edge of this kind of just little tapping on something that he knew. I think he knew it would just drive me crazy.
And as you get wide open, as you expand your iris more and more, your depth of field gets smaller and smaller to the point where we've seen people where the tip of your nose is in focus, but your eye's out.
This background looks great when it's out of focus. When it's in focus, you're like, wow, he's got a bunch of junk on his
I know.
So it's better. It's better.
Well, these are the things in photography and cinematography that people who know what they're doing control. They know how much depth of field is acceptable, and they lens for that, and they light for that, and then they know exactly what they're working with. So I can. It's a little soft. I've heard that more than I can tell you when I started shooting with DSLRs and had multiple lenses available. Let's go to the next question.
And it's from Zach Marley in Minneapolis, Minnesota. Does anyone have experience with the Panasonic BS1H for multicam? Seems like a good option that has Genlock, timecode, a full-frame sensor, and can be powered and controlled by Ethernet, Power over Ethernet Plus. It also seems to be only $2,500 now.
Alex, what do you think?
It's a great looking camera. I've seen it used as extra cameras, that's overhead or something like that. We haven't seen it used in a true multicam experience. It's not. I don't know if it's really built for that. So it while it has a lot of those controls, I've never seen anyone try to shade it. The images that come out of it are amazing. Like, they just look beautiful. So it's a really nice camera, and it's a box camera, so it lets you kind of build up your kit around it. And I've seen people use it for a lot of film stuff and a lot of overhead and extra cameras. I haven't seen them use it in a true multicam experience.
Yeah, it really looks like an interesting thing. Courtney?
Yeah, as far as a box cam goes, it looks interesting, and it comes with a plethora of I/O, and it has SDI out and HDMI out, and I think the HDMI out will do 12-bit, so you could hook a Atomos recorder, record some 12-bit RAW out of it, as well as it does H.264 and HEVC encoding and recording on board, and it has a dual SD card for ping-ponging between storage media, so you can have endless storage media. It looks quite capable, and the Genlock in will let it be used in multi-camera setups. It remains to be seen what kind of apps they have that interface to it over the Ethernet to control its color or not, but we'll see, I guess.
There you go. Let's go to the next question.
Andy Kokendorfer from Viera, Florida. What is the mic gain on the Mixpre 3 version 2? I use an SM7B, and I like to get rid of the cloud lifter. Thanks.
Yeah, we would like you to. Alex?
I believe it's 70-some dB, somewhere in that range is the range there. I don't remember exactly what the number is, but it's plenty for an SM7B, and it is. And that's the big thing, is that it does have the preamp that you need for that kind of mic. Friends don't let friends use cloud lifters. Like, don't do it. Like, so a cloud lifter is something that you put into place as an emergency situation for one event. Like, you should have a cloud lifter, and it should sit in your bag, and it should almost always be in your bag, not in the actual production. Cloud lifter means that we didn't do enough pre-pro, and there's a mic that's too low, and you got to bring it up. It should not be a permanent part of your machine. That is not how you should ever use a cloud lifter, is as a permanent part of your chain. It is an emergency piece of tool. It's a very, very effective emergency item that you add to your chain because you didn't plan it out well enough to get it to put the proper preamp in with the mic. But it adds noise. It's just bringing all that stuff up. It is not a clean connection, and you should not put it into your chain permanently. That's all I got to say.
And you're serious about it, Mitchell.
I'm very serious about it. Like, it's just like I can hear the noise when someone has a cloud lifter, and I'm like, what is that noise coming from? And it's a cloud lifter. And so so it's not again. I have a cloud lifter. It sits in my bag, and if I get a mic and we don't have any other choice, we put the cloud lifter in for one day until I figure out how to not have it be that way. But you should not have it as a permanent part of your pipeline.
We should spread the appropriation. It's not a cloud lifter. And what's the other one that people use?
Dynamite.
No, not the Technic one. It has
there's a dynamite stick.
Dynamite stick? I've never used that.
Either
That's
way.
interesting. Yeah. There's 2 or 3 of these things. They're inline barrel connectors that do gain up
Nothing-
at usually a fixed rate. And
Nothing
they all
replaces-
are a little loud.
Nothing replaces a high quality preamp. like high quality.
Yeah, Fed head.
preamp.
That's Mickey just helped me.
Fed
The
head,
Fed
yeah.
head. Yeah. The Fed head's real popular too. Same thing. Great if you need it. If you don't have
glad
anything
they
else, you
exist.
need to get on the air.
We're glad they exist. They're really, really good to fix as a. The same thing with. I mean, it's not the same because it's not as noisy, but like decimators is a good example of when I see a bunch of decimators sitting in someone's permanent pipeline. I'm like, that's not the way to use that device because it has a fair amount of latency. It loses a couple frames going through it. And so I'm kind of like, the decimator is one of the most valuable tools that we have in our pipeline of being able to fix things while we're working, but I don't depend on it. I'm almost always, something that I don't keep it in a permanent pipeline. The only place I keep it in a permanent pipeline is to flip text for teleprompters. Like that's the way we do it for a cheaper monitor. So there you go.
Mitchell, did you get in or did you still have a comment?
No, I have one more. I'm just wondering how much better would the SM7D be, which was just announced and has a built-in preamp, making a dynamic mic with a built-in preamp. Would that work far better than a cloud lifter or any of those other devices that add on?
We need to test it and find out. Like I have reservations about them putting cheap electronics in, not very expensive electronics in to increase the quality and increase the volume. So I have, I would love to get one and kind of put it through its paces of this is what this would look like, but we don't know yet.
Be interesting to see. Sure, as a long-time audio company should know what they're doing, but again, they may be trying to hit a price target as opposed to trying to hit.
When you look at the price
quality
change, like there's a physics problem with what you put in there. I just don't know if they put enough into it to make it. It would probably work for the average person because that is a number one complaint about the SM7B is that it's not loud enough, or it doesn't have enough oomph to it. But I am concerned that it will add more noise.
Let's go to the next question.
Douglas Carmichael, how will broadcasters and other media companies compensate talent for cloning their voices using software like Respeecher? Even if the talent may not be working for that said organization, will they have the right to veto use of their voice?
Well,
I think you have an extra word in there. You said, how will broadcasters compensate talent for cloning? Alex, start us off.
Yeah, that's part of what the big fight is right now with SAG and AFTRA is figuring out who gets to do what with what. It's not just their voice; it's their whole likeness. And the problem that the real fight is less about the main actors because you still have to negotiate with them and they'll put it in their contract and everything else. It's more about the bit actors, the extras, and everything else. I mean, Hollywood's looking at a future in the not too distant future where they get to not have to have any extras, and that it's within 10 years they're going to try to eliminate extras almost completely from most of it. We may have a couple that are nearby, but the quality of the rendering and so on and so forth is getting so good that once you get more than 15 feet from the camera, you could probably replace everybody. And so what they're doing is they're scanning people as they come in for their shows and only paying them for the hours that it takes. And then they just have that data. And so that's that's what's there. I don't know if they actually need that. When you look at things like MetaHuman, I'm not sure. They scanned lots and lots of people and they paid them specifically to be scanned. And I'm not sure that Hollywood really needs to acquire more actors to do this, but that is the concern.
Courtney?
Yeah, as Alex just alluded to, the SAG-AFTRA contract is just the minimums that you have to adhere, producers have to adhere to. Any actor can negotiate their own terms above and beyond the terms that are the minimums in that contract. So you can put in your own contract that, you reserve the right to your image and likeness in perpetuity, and if they use it in any other form, they must compensate you at such and such a rate. You can build that into your contract, and you don't necessarily have to adhere unless they say, no, we'll either go with the basic contract or bye-bye, we'll cast somebody else. You always have that option. So it is going to be a little bit tricky. They already have stuff in contracts, if you read the fine print, that they have their right to use your image and voice in perpetuity on all planets here and ever after across the universe. It's actually written that broadly for that particular product, for that movie. They have the right to distribute it and make money off of it for now into eternity, So they can put it into the contracts.
And they have. Jeffrey?
So, and this is not new. I mean, we had episode 4. I remember the story about how they did the at the end scene. There was like 90% cardboard cutouts of the whole crowd, and then of course you have the whole Crispin Glover incident from Back to the Future, where they replaced the actor in Back to the Future 2, but they used his likeness for that, and so this is just the next evolution on that, which is making the contracts bigger, but definitely protecting them. But I could also see a situation where it's like I'm an extra in a TV show or movie, and I'm getting scanned, and then they're saying you are going to be seen 10, 20 times, even though you're not acting in that. And if you're okay with that, that's how that's going to happen. But it'll be interesting to see what happens. And then got to wonder what the next level is after that, where that's going to be put in a contract to protect actors' rights.
Mitchell.
Well, there's nothing better than the bespoke person that spoke the words in the first place rather than a digital approximation. And I think that the most actors, if you're worth your salt, are out there trying to get a digital representation of their personage and also their voice, because when they're gone, there's no way to use them. So wouldn't it be great to bring John Wayne back, or Humphrey Bogart, or a number of other actors that may come and go? That would be cool.
It's an interesting topic. Alex, finish up, and I have one little thought.
Yeah, I mean, one of the things that a lot of actors, the bigger actors, are taking advantage of this. They're getting themselves scanned and photographed regularly over time. So they've, and they do that so that they can license those back to the movie companies later. So if you want a younger version of this person, you actually have the digital data that you need to make that. And they've been doing that for the last 20 years. So that's been, I don't know what those early scans were really worth and how much data they really gave. But as far as figuring out bone structure and everything else, it does make a difference. And so some of the larger actors have been getting ready for this for a long time. And of course, they have the leverage to say this is the way it's going to be. But the problem really is what they're fighting about right now is not the big actors who can make those contracts or say what it's all the smaller actors that are the extras, the person who says one word, the things that happen there. That's what they're afraid that is all going to go away. The main actors are still going to be there for quite some time. And again, even in like Star Wars, they did compensate the families of the deceased actors that were used in Rogue One. Those were they did find that way. And again, for a major role, they're probably going to do that just because it's bad. It's just bad press to not do that. But it's the smaller actors, all the people walking around that they're really concerned about, because the fundamental problem is the ecosystem. When you cut that ecosystem out and you only have big actors that are in there, how do you get to be a big actor? You're a bit part, and you're an extra, and you're all these other things that get you into that pipeline, and that's going to get harder and harder as they start to replace them with digital characters.
It was interesting to me. I was just reading yesterday an article about the last surviving, well, not the last surviving, but Christine McVie in Fleetwood Mac just passed away, obviously. And her rights to the band's songs went up on the auction block. I didn't realize this before, but she was the last person who hadn't already sold all of her publishing rights and all of everything else into a big conglomerate. Everybody else in the band had already done that, and her now, I think, brother, has those rights and just got a multi-$100 million payday for having those rights and selling it into a conglomerate who will manage those rights going forward. You forget that behind bands and things like that, there are these very tight contracts about who owns what piece of what and the corporation that they become rather than a band. And we're seeing that right now with the YouTube thing. Larry Mullen Jr. is ill, I believe, or is going through something, and they had to hire in a separate drummer. Well, I think he's still making a tremendous amount of money off of this huge content opportunity, even though he's not actually playing in there, but that's because he has rights ownership to all of that music. And it's a very complicated world of talent, residuals, rights, where your names are in the contract and where they're not. There's much more business behind the music business than I think we tend to think. We tend to look at just the personalities and the tabloid stuff, but there's a lot of very small type behind these things sometimes. Let's go on to the next question.
David Brady from New York, has a question. Favorite font foundries? Looking for a reputable place to buy fonts, specifically Japanese double-byte fonts like Yosemite.
Alex, do you know any Japanese font foundry people?
No, I actually don't. I was looking through that. I mean, there's a lot of them, and even David is showing one that is that has that font that's there, which is looking really, really cool. It's a really cool looking font. I usually, when I'm doing stuff for projects, I tend to go to Monotype because I understand the contracts of what I can and can't do. It's it's a really giant, massive one, of course, the Adobe font. And then there's lots of little fonts. I'm sure Mitchell's going to bring up a smaller font foundry. And smaller foundries, I love smaller foundries. I love looking at the creativity of those things, and I have lots of them in my collection, and so I have thousands of fonts that are there. I don't know if I have an Etimoji font or the Yosemite fonts there, which is I feel like there's something missing. Just be careful with those fonts. Now David will understand this, but be careful of what they mean. I had a friend who once bought a shirt in Japantown that was a bunch of cool characters on it, and what the shirt actually said is, "I am a stupid American." so make sure you know what the fonts actually mean. so anyway, there you go.
All right, Mitchell.
First of all, he who dies with the most fonts wins. As far as foundries, yes. As far as foundries go, I like Adobe. I mean, they're convenient. They have quite a few kanji scripts, so you should be okay there if you want to start there, and then go to somebody specialized.
All right. Lots of fonts. Let's go to the next question.
Henry Ramos in Yonkers, New York. Can someone explain more about JPEG XS? Saw a vendor yesterday showing an ultra-low latency IP transmission system using it.
Alex, what say you?
Yeah, so we probably need a second hour on XS, and I'm not going to claim that I'm an expert in XS, but what I will tell you is that the compression, what XS brings is we lose a lot. When I say a lot, we lose latency. So it takes about anywhere from 30 to 60 milliseconds to compress JPEG 2000 and all the hardware that we have right now. So if you're using a Nimbra or some of the other things. So if you want to convert baseband video into JPEG 2000, you're losing 1 to 2 frames on the way through, which may not seem like a lot to you, but if you're trying to do ultra low latency, that starts to add up, and you need the same thing to decode it. So what JPEG XS is promising is latency under 10 milliseconds to do the same thing. So what we think we can do for ultra low latency on a round trip is pull 120 milliseconds out of our round trip, which is a lot. So because now we're really talking about only dealing with the fiber, connection between the two locations, and across the United States, that's probably about 40 to 50 milliseconds. From San Francisco to LA, it's, like 17 as we measured it. And then, even from somewhere like China, it might be 300, but you don't, so 350 milliseconds from China it's a lot of latency, but you don't want to add another 120 milliseconds to that or another 60. So that's what JPEG XS offers us is these crazy low latencies where we're now down to, depending on the distance, potentially subframe latency from Northern California to Southern California. And so that's what that's what it promises. And that's the extent of my knowledge of JPEG XS. We'll try to bring an expert on and see if we can find a time to talk about it more.
Yeah, it looks like it'll be fun. Let's get to the next question.
Jack Rupel in Breckenridge, Colorado, asking, Monday, Apple announcements for a new iPad, possibly with better camera, perfect for Blackmagic design phone app.
Jeffrey Powers, start us off.
So there's been a lot of rumors back and forth, but the reality is that what Apple did back in September is they didn't order as many M3 chips. Because they did see a sharp decline in MacBook and iPad sales. If there is a new iPad that comes out, this was usually the time where the lower-end iPads would come out. I'm not saying that it's not impossible, but the probability is fairly low. We would normally see an iPad Pro around March, but this would be like not back to school, but the holiday sales of iPads, and of course, the lower the price, the better in a lot of situations. What they're going to be talking about most likely is the iMac and maybe a new MacBook Pro, but mostly the iMac. Scary fast. The logo is the Apple logo turning into the Finder. So I don't think it's software related because they would have done that at WWDC. So it makes me wonder with everything with the Qualcomm chip going on that they were supposed to put in their own Apple wireless system into the iPhones, but they didn't have enough at the time. Maybe they're going to start with the iMac and putting in something like 2.5 gigabit per second Ethernet, but we'll have to see what happens on this very odd-timed virtual event.
Halloween time. Alex, what do you think?
I agree with Jeffrey that the chances of iPads being released on Monday are very low. I mean, they might, but it would be very low. So I think that it's not low, but not zero. But I would say probably 99% chance that there's not going to be any iPads. That they are a spring release. I don't know if they've ever released them in the fall. Maybe they have once, but it's been very rare. I think it's just going to be hardware. It's going to be Mac hardware, I think.
You know, what's interesting to me is that they've been debuting the new chips in the lower end laptops, the MacBook Airs and stuff like that got the M2s and things like that before the MacBook Pros or anything else upscale. So they have this weird thing about putting the brand new chips in some of the lower, more affordable.
The only argument to put the iPad Pros into the release on Monday would be to clump them in with the laptops, to say, hey, these are the next generation of laptops. And so that would be the one argument for it, is to put I don't think they put all the iPads in, but the iPad Pro releasing might be the case.
There you go. The next question.
Brody Brazil from Danville, California. My ATEMs Mini are dead silent. Just installed the Extreme model, which seems to have a constant low fan buzz noise. Is this consistent with everyone else's experience?
There are fans involved, aren't there, Alex?
No, it's not. It's not consistent. It shouldn't be that way. Like you should RMA it. Like there's a fan problem. Like it's not. Yeah, I don't have any. I've had this one running forever, and I have never had that problem. So I would not. I do not think that it's something that it shouldn't be any different than the Mini.
Courtney?
Yeah, maybe you've got something that's touching that fan blade that's buzzing in there. And also make sure you turn down the brightness on your buttons, because that will kick the fan up to a higher speed when it gets hot. So turn the brightness down to 0 or slightly above, maybe 1, and it'll cut down on the heat inside.
Dave, next question.
Dave Kaufman from Vancouver, British Columbia, asking, on an ATEM multi-camera using HDMI, how does the switcher sync the clocks on the cameras?
Ooh, let's talk Blackburst. Mitchell?
Well, it syncs because every input on the ATEM is resync. So if they resync everything, they're all going to be at that resync refresh rate.
I wanted to say sunk did, and that's wrong. Alex?
I don't think that they're syncing the HDMI. So you need Genlock, and you're going to need a STI signal to do that. You can't sync the HDMIs. Genlock them. You can't Genlock them together. When you're talking about syncing the cameras or having them all run into it, let's say an ATEM Mini Extreme or an ATEM Mini, what they're doing is they're not syncing the cameras. They're simply getting the next whole frame from each camera. So they're waiting to deliver that one, and so it slows down that, and that's why you lose oftentimes a frame. If you don't have your up to a frame or up to 2 frames, you can lose if you're not Genlocking everything that you have there. But there is no Genlock for the ATEM Mini. There's no Genlock for a lot of the HDMI cameras. But you have to Genlock them, and then it is that cadence. Then it's generating the frames at the same time, and everything in the system has to do that, or it has to be reclocked on the way through. And so when you're connecting it to a Mini, now if you're connecting SDI cameras to an SDI switcher and you're Genlocking all of them, then they will be all right in sync. But otherwise, it may be delayed by 1 or up to 2 frames as it grabs the next whole frame.
Courtney?
Yeah, all the new ATEMs with the HDMI inputs have frame synchronizers on each input. So I think it takes number 1 as its common sync source, and it bases its sync off the input to input number 1, and it just frame synchronizes all the other inputs by buffering them a frame or 2 and clocks them to match what's coming in on number 1 on the output. It doesn't change the sync as far as if you're talking about time code sync, time code in the cameras, it does not go out and resynchronize, I don't believe, the time code generators that are in those cameras. So I don't think it does anything with time code, if that's what you're talking about, sync. Frame synchronization is handled inside the ATEM Minis, at least the modern ones, the newer ones.
Yeah, once upon a time in facilities, we used to have to run Blackburst, which was really just a signal black, but its whole sole purpose was to hit various machines and start everything on exactly the right end of the vertical interval before you got to the first line of the thing. Gone away now, and these frame shakers, I used to call them, but synchronizers now, manage to connect with some part of the signals coming in, put them all together, but it's not quite the same as the old Blackburst stuff that we used to have. It's just something you got to get used to in the new video world. Let's go to the next question.
Yeah, and NSYNC is a different thing altogether.
Yeah, it's totally
Liberty
boy band.
White in Atlanta, Georgia. Per Dave Troutman's question, I got the Pages teleprompter feature to work on my iPad. However, when I tried to pipe my iPad through my ATEM to switch and demo, Pages didn't show up, only the iPad's home screen. Why is that?
I don't know. When I did it a few minutes ago, it worked, and all I have is my iPad Pro connected through HDMI into an ATEM Mini, and it seemed to work just fine. So there may be some connection there. I'm trying to think if I had to do anything. I didn't have to do anything else. It was Pages, so it wasn't something that like Keynote that I normally run into my iPad, and it just seemed to work traditionally. So I give it a little closer look. Alex?
Yeah, I would have it. So what I would do is make sure that your Pages is not opened. I would plug your iPad into your switcher, and then I would open Pages and then change its mode. And I think you may find that it pops up into that environment.
Yeah, mine's still, I just popped it up and it's still working, and it's all there. So I didn't have to do anything special is, I guess, my point for you, Liberty. Courtney, you have any thoughts?
Yeah, did you discover any place to mirror the image coming out of that iPad?
I did not.
You could use it into a real teleprompter?
No, let me pop it back up. I'll put black behind it, so you should be seeing that. It's got very few controls here. It's got up and down. It's got a few background colors. It's got font choosing, so you can change from serif to serif. It's got some line spacing and margin thing, which can be nice. It's got all caps if you want to do that. What else do we have?
And then you can just scroll it with your finger. Is that kind of how it's designed to work?
No, if you put on auto scroll, I think, and you just touch it, it starts scrolling and it slows down. If you decide that's not the speed you want, you have to go down, and it'll give you a real time, real slow scrolling to much faster scrolling. So it's tap on the screen to start and stop scroll speed. So it's rudimentary and pretty simple. If you just want to throw up an iPad.
That's how Apple starts.
Yeah. Who knows what it's going to turn into, but it's built into Pages. So, this is literally just a Pages document that I happen to have on my screen. It starts out looking like that, just a big wall of text, and then it does all the processing and bring the sides in and do everything else to make it prompt friendly. So it's a basic, but it's there. All right, let's go to the next question.
Michael Tan from San Diego, California. Any panelist tried LoopDeck with BitFocus Companion?
Alex, have you tried the combo?
I have to admit that I have LoopDeck and I have a BitFocus Companion, but I have not thought about, until Michael put this up, I have not really thought about the idea of connecting the two together. I don't know why, but we'll play with that. We'll see if we can't find a time. Maybe even we'll lab it. We're going to be doing, this gives us an opportunity to remind people that over the next couple of weeks, we'll be doing mostly Q&A, and the second hour, we'll have some labs, that are happening during the second hour if we have a little bit of time, so we'll still be answering questions in the second hour, but we might take it 15-20 minutes out to do a little lab. I think that Chris Fenwick and I are going to do one next Wednesday on the Korg control, the Korg controller. So if you've got ideas for labs, put those in the second hour suggestions in Discord. But these won't be we're not trying to make these whole second hours. We're just going to be like, we're now going to stop for a little while and do this and see how it turns out.
There you go. I think we're going to the next question.
From Bobby Rafferty in Central Florida asking, I'm trying to use geolocation for augmented reality on an iPhone. I've seen Apple's developer docs that ARKit has limit only to a limited amount of cities in the United States. What other options are out there?
Alex?
It's what other easy options are out there is the question. So as far as, GPS data, there's a lot of GPS data there, and there's not a lot of other, you can geolocate, anything to some degree. But the main thing is that, you're, as far as ARKit goes, Google has some of its own solutions that are out there as far as they've scanned an awful lot and and they have a whole Google Maps process to make that actually work. But The harder version of this is to do a lot of the scanning yourself, so that you know exactly where it is. Because once you know roughly where you are, you can actually hash the data that you've scanned. You don't need high res data. You just need key components of it to figure out exactly where you are. But that is still, it's still a work in progress. I would probably focus on the ones that you have available to you right now. But because the lift to do what I just said is high. There's not a lot of what we're talking about right now is hard. But we should see it. And I would highly recommend finding cities that are supported and play with the ideas and play with the ARKit pieces, because this is going to be a big deal, regardless of whether you think that the headsets are going to do well. AR solutions added to phones is going to continue to get to be a big deal as far as being able to add data to your people walking around and being able to see what they want to see there.
Let's go to the next question.
And it's from Chester Sweeney in Las Vegas, Nevada. Is there an actual thick paper book manual for the Mixpre 3, Flow 8, Behringer, and Logic Pro? I often work online.
Alex?
Yes.
Sorry.
Yes. Fortunately for you, there is a thick manual. It's about this thick. It's about the thickness of your phone or your iPad. So what I do is I take all of my documents. So all of my manuals are on my iPad, and oftentimes they're on my phone as well. So you can you get the PDF of their manual and you download it, and then you load it into books. And now I have this folder full of all of my manuals for all of my stuff. And so if I'm not I do it specifically so that if I'm not online, I can pick it up. I will say that when you get used to using manuals on an iPad, you're not going to want to go back to paper. You can't search. You can't, paper is so horrible when you're used to using it. But the iPad is what really makes it work, in my opinion, to be offline on an iPad or a tablet and being able to just jump through to where you want to go and find all the instances of a certain word. It's way, way easier than actually having paper.
Next question.
And the next one's coming into us from Peter Moore in Auckland, New Zealand. What's the Sony camera Alex uses here with that awesome autofocus, and what lens is he using?
Alex? I'm using an FX30 with the G series 1.4 35 millimeter lens, and so I'm about 3 feet away. So that's about the right for that 35 millimeter. So 35 millimeter G series 1.4 with that's nearly as costly as the camera. So, but an FX30. So that's what I'm using right now.
Mitchell?
What's kind of cool about the Sony autofocus is it's equally good on just about everything in their line. My ZV E10 looks about as good on the autofocus department as my FX3, which is a step above what Alex has there, which is the FX30.
Well,
and I suspect that even the FX6 or the FX9 are all going to be in the similar area.
The reason I'm not using the ZV E10 as a daily thing, which I was for a couple months, was the color. Like, I just can't quite get the color right. So until I'm going to probably put a LUT box in between the camera and the switcher, and then I can apply LUTs to it. But it's really the lack of color control on the ZV E10 is the real thing that has me not use it.
The only time I've seen a problem with the autofocus not being quite up to speed is an off-brand lens on it. If you're not using a Sony lens, Sony's the best for the Sony camera. But if you're using a cheap lens, it might not be quite as quick.
And I think that's one of the benefits of the algorithmic world we live in now. I've noticed that, for example, I do my audiobook stuff in Final Cut. Why? Because the audio code is exactly the same code from Logic. They didn't write two code bases for those two programs. They wrote code base to do audio handling well and slapped it into Final Cut, slapped it into Logic. It's probably in other programs that need to handle audio. So I think the Sony cameras are benefiting the same thing. They did all the research to make autofocus as good as it's ever been. And so they're taking that code and whatever servos and the rest of it and informing each other, and you just get the whole line getting better. I think that's a really kind of benefit to the way they work these years. Mitch, somebody, I heard Jeffrey. Jeffrey, did you have a comment you wanted to make? Or?
I just said that you also have to make sure your lens is clean for focus to really kick in. Right.
Always a good idea to have lens cloth or a lens pen or something that you're comfortable using with you all the time. I can't tell you the number of times I've been shooting and did you touch that lens? No. Let's look at it. Oh, there's a fingerprint. You don't want that to happen. Let's go to the next question.
Chester Sweeney from Las Vegas, Nevada. I often miss the MacBreak Weekly Classic lineup. Will Renee, Andy, and Leo ever return to Office Hours Global for a special event or something?
Oh, Alex, what say you?
I think we've had them all on individually in special events. We haven't had them all together. I don't know. We would probably do that, but I think we've had all three of them as guests, and we need to bring Jason on because we haven't had Jason on as to our show. So stay tuned for that.
There you go. So something to look forward to. I mean, we're revamping things all the time around here. I'm sure they'll want to come on when we're Dolby 5.1 or 7.1 and something super HDR or something. They'll probably want to come back and look great on there.
I want to see a death match between Alex and Andy.
Oh, well, maybe a rumble, not a death match. Anyway, next question.
Next one in from Douglas Carmichael. Wonka and the Chocolate Factory was shot on the classic Airflex 2C camera. How would that camera department know what they've shot if there wasn't a video assist tap on the camera?
If you've ever used a video assist, even if you're using video assist, you still have no idea about anything except gross framing. I worked with them in my early part of my career. Alex, what say you?
I think that a lot of them do have video assist. Like they usually, I don't know if anybody shoots anything without a video assist of some kind. It may not be through the lens, but there's definitely something there so they can see what they're framing.
Courtney?
Yeah, the Airflex 2C, I doubt they shot the whole movie on the Airflex 2C. It's a 35mm camera. It's unblimped. Here's what it looks like. There is a video door that you can get for it that has a video assist on the side of it that replaces the viewfinder door here with a pellicle and a video assist camera that goes on there. It's unblimped, so it sounds like a mix master when it's rolling, so it makes recording dialogue quite difficult unless they're using some type of noise removal. And there's no reason to. There are a lot better 35mm blimped cameras than the Airflex 2C. They're usually used for third cameras or stunts, filming stunts, where you need a bunch of cameras that are cheaper to use than the panavized Airflexes. So I doubt that they shot the movie on an Airflex 2C. Maybe
First
on
three commercials
film, but not using a 2C.
First three commercials I worked on and directed in 35mm film, we used video assist, and it was horrible in general. It was a small camera, as Courtney was saying, connected to, I think it was a Mitchell BNC that we shot it on. And you got a black and white, small, ugly monitor that had a little frame around it that says this is what the gate is actually shooting. It was kind of plus or minus 15%. So you really couldn't superbly frame a shot even, let alone see anything other than just a flickering, because there's some sort of mirror system that was in motion in there. So you were only getting half the actual frames that you could see. It was not the best environment, and there's so much better now that I'm sure no one, that seems like it's an earlier era, and if I had my choice, I'd never work with anything like that again. Alex, you had a follow-up?
Yeah, what I will say is one thing I've learned about in Hollywood is directors and cinematographers get into these goofy ideas that they want to do something cool or something different, and it gives I used to think that it was for a good reason, and for some of them they're highly technical and they are for good reasons. I mean, if you want to use an IMAX camera, there's a reason to use it. If you want to use things, but a lot of times they just get into these kind of goofy little paths, and you think that there was something, but as you talk to them, you realize they just thought it'd be interesting. Like like it would just it has nothing to do. Like you're just like I got budget, let's do it. And you're just like, okay, all right. So anyway, and it's always hell for us.
Anyway, next question.
Jack Ruppel from Breckenridge, Colorado, asking lenticular photos. Thoughts about from the panel. There's a link to it, and then another link for scientific visualization.
I'm really happy Alex is here today. Alex, you do this kind of stuff.
I have not done these, but I have to admit I subscribed. I'm now subscriber number 120, whatever, for Jared Hoffman's lenticular printing masterclass. I don't know. I guess it's only gotten 4,500 views in a year, but it's really worth looking at. This is he's talking about how to build that and how it works, and so I would definitely check that out. The link is in here, but I'm going to go subscribe to it. Lenticular is when they print ridges on the surface, and so they have different things there. So as you move it, it feels like it's 3D. And I've always been kind of fascinated by it. And even I have a camera. I have this red Android camera has actually that kind of surface on it, so that you can see 3D there. It's really slick. Surprised that it's that you could print it, and I'm fascinated by the technology.
Jeffrey, you have a thought?
Well, it's not just movement, but it's also the ability to have two different images. Like in one of those videos, they had Spider-Man, and then if you turned it, the Spider-Man's logo was showed from there. I remember these photos from back when I was a kid, and they were like super cool to always get. So to have it on the phone is pretty sweet. But yeah, it's just basically having one print on one side, one print on the other side, and when you start to turn it, that's when you see the effect. And of course, if they're very close, then it looks like the thing is moving. So we'll see what happens, and if this becomes something that we can do on everyday production.
I think I got one of those in a Cracker Jacks box when I was a kid as a prize. It was
Absolutely
fascinating. Yeah, Courtney.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, like Bill says, they've been around for 75 years or so, or more. Lenticular used to be able to get them on cereal boxes. Used to have 3D images printed on the face of them occasionally, and there was a whole period of phones with lenticular screens on them with stereo cameras on the back that came out around 2007 through 2009 through 2010. They were popular for a couple of years there when 3D was really big for a while. So there were about 20 to 30 different phones that had these 3D cameras and a lenticular display on the back so that you could kind of see the 3D effect by using that prismatic back to separate the images for the left eye and the right eye when looking at it from the phone. But that was the only way you could see it unless you projected it with, a 3D projector that used polarizing filters for your lenses or other means.
We've got one more, so let's knock it out so that we don't leave any questions behind.
Final question from Douglas Carmichael. The MSG Sphere advertises their AI-powered lobby robots. How would an off-the-shelf LLM, I've read they use GPT-3, be customized for this application, especially since so many languages are needed? And how would you protect against hallucinations?
Alex?
As best they can. I mean, I think that with a lot of these things, like people are just excited that it's working, and it probably is not mission critical kind of content for it. The only way to get some of this stuff to work is to do it. And so I think that they're going to do it. They're going to allow it to make some mistakes, and they're going to keep on error correcting for it. I think that's probably their big plan.
You get somebody to shovel $2.5 billion. Is that what that place? Mm-hmm. Yeah. And so there's a lot of, hey, I know what else we could do.
Yeah, I mean, sometimes you just have to be willing to take the hit,
Absolutely. Well, that takes us to the end of the show. Thank you all for being here. It was an incredibly fun day. At least I enjoyed it immensely. I hope you all did too, both here on the panel. Thank you guys very much for being here today. And for everybody, I hope, in the audience. The Isadora Lab is coming up right after this. So that's going to be 10 a.m. Pacific, right in after hours, I think. So the L will be here with the Isadora Lab. Today's going to have another lab. So if you're interested in brainstorming the NDI in a box solution with Mimo Live, John Idelson and Oliver Breidenbach will both be here at 11 o'clock after that, after L's gig. And they're going to be designing and brainstorming NDI in a box for Mimo Live. So that all should be fun. Our huge thanks to everybody who's involved with this, everybody who showed up here on the panel to do the panel work. We appreciate it's just amazing. People show up every day and just give of their time. So I appreciate all my fellow panelists here. And thank you for being here and providing your expertise. For the crew and everybody on the back end who keeps this show running every time, every day. Without your questions, we couldn't do this. So we really appreciate it. You had a great group of questions today. Enjoyed it thoroughly. And we'll be back tomorrow to do the same thing. And let us never forget, all of you who are watching the show, you are the reason we are here. Thank you for participating top to bottom in the whole thing. It has been fabulous. The Talak traversal today for bananas, we had lots of them. And as a matter of fact, we traveled 105,000 miles. That's 170,000 kilometers. That is more than 836 million of these for scale. We'll see you all tomorrow. Thanks for watching.
Go down and look at the new space today. So excited.
Is it the Fantasy Records place?
Not Fantasy. That's in Berkeley.
Record plant.
Record plant.
Record plant.
I think.
The lenticular.
Sausalito.
The lenticular photo was invented and patented in 1906.
Made out of
100 years
polystyrene.
ago.
If you get the record press, then you can say, let's press that.
The record press, the plant press, the flower press.
The question is, will it smell like vinyl?
I don't think that's what it'll smell.
More like 10 rats.
That's a wrap.
Vinyl shavings in every corner. He probably had lathes there. Thanks, everybody. See you all tomorrow.